Hey there, it's your host, Mara Glatzel, and you are listening to Even Here, Even Now, a podcast where we are devoted to sharing frank conversations and true stories about what it means to stay by your own side and meet your needs consistently, messily, and sustainably. Now, on to today's show. Hello, friends. Welcome back to Even Here, Even Now. This is a podcast episode that I have been working my way up to, flirting with, recording all summer long. And I'm excited to be here with you. And to talk about, really, what we're talking about here is coming alive and staying alive. And over the course of the last month, I have reached out to so many of you to ask you about your burnout, to ask you about your stories, to ask you about why it is that you are feeling so crispy, because I know so many of us are feeling so crispy. And you have said things like, I couldn't possibly take care of myself given the political climate here in the States. I couldn't possibly get to myself when there are so many things on my list. There are so many people reaching out to me. There are so many people who require my care and my support. And my list is so long and I just never seem to get to myself. And I get it. I get it so deeply, right? I work with responsible ones, eldest daughters, those of us who, eldest daughter or no, learn to shoulder the heavy mantle of responsibility at an early age and just have not ever put it down, because how could we put it down? There are so many things to carry. There are so many needs to be met in the microcosm of our lives, in the, culture, the world overall. And for those of us who are intimately familiar with not tending to ourselves, unless all of the people in our lives are tended to, unless all of our causes are, overwhelmingly supportive, unless every single person around us is pleased and happy and doing well, we know that time has never come, right? The time that feels right, the time that feels ideal, the time that it's easy. We have this fantasy, right, that somewhere out there is a time that is easier than right now to take care of and be with ourselves. And so the first thing that I want to say is that I understand how seductive that pattern is. And also, when we are stuck in that pattern, there will always be something to put our care on the other side of. I know for me, over the course of the last 5 years of my life, 6 years of my life, I've had young children. I've had a business to tend to. I had a relationship that I was trying desperately to hold together with my bare hands, while also losing loved ones, caring for a friend as he was sick until his last days, having him pass away in our home. And so over the course of this month here on this podcast, we are going to be doing a spotlight on burnout, right? How and why we get burnt out, but also what the emotional and energetic underpinnings of burnout are, because it is a both and story. And if we want to be well, like genuinely want to be well, genuinely want to live our lives in the only way that we can, that is real and true and fully expressed, which if you are here, I know that you want, even if it feels like, I want it, but do I really want it? I want it, but I want it like, I don't know. I can't really interface with what it is going to require for me to come into alignment. So I'm going to go back a little while in my own burnout story and say that my book came out on the heels of our good friend. He was terminally ill. We took care of him like acutely, meaning my partner moved out of our home, lived with him in another home. I was home with our little kids. I was trying to finish my book. Eventually we moved him into our home. and grappled with the huge grief of ultimately losing him. And right after that, my book came out. When my book came out, I was on 100 podcasts in 3 months. I was working really hard to get Needy out into the world. And on the other edge of launching my book and being on all those podcasts and being really visible for maybe the first time in my life, I kind of fell off of a cliff, energetically, capacity-wise. And I found myself really deeply burnt out, unable to write. The work within my communities was stellar, but I didn't have it in me to be visible on my podcast or on my email list or online in the ways that I had. And so eventually this caused my business to kind of shrivel on the vine, even though the work inside of my communities was better than it had ever been. The thing that I couldn't do was be myself out loud. And over the last, so this was 2023. Over the last 2 years, I have been fighting my way back alive. And that has included so many different things that I'm going to share with you. But I want to say here at the top that the most important thing in my life that has helped me come back to life, the most important thing that I think any of us can have, is a desire and a willingness. A willingness. I wanted to be alive more than I wanted to be pleasing. I wanted to be alive more than I wanted everything to go perfectly, more than I wanted to avoid conflict, more than I wanted to be the person who everybody knew and expected me to be. And it was that willingness that helped me walk the long journey out of my burnout and into something that is much livelier, much more vibrant, and much more well-nourished than I have ever experienced before in my life. And I've been doing this work for a long time, but as we all know, one of the main reasons to do this work, or maybe we don't know, maybe it's worth saying, for me, one of the reasons that I am so hyper-focused on this work is because things happen. The shit hits the fan. People get sick. People die. Your life gets turned on a dime. And the tools and the like very structure of the relationship that you have with yourself is the thing that you have when the floor drops out. So I was kind of coming back to life. And then in March of this year, my partner of 17 years and I separated. And we have 2 kids. It wasn't desired by me. It wasn't the outcome that I had been working really hard towards or hoping for. And what I found was that it was like the bottom of the bottom of the bottoms dropped out. Right? The kind of rejection and the abandonment that I had been running from for my entire life, had been working so hard to avoid, to save myself from, to protect myself from, my entire life happened. And it was gnarly. I mean, I won't lie, it was gnarly. I got really sick with bronchitis. I was in bed for 6-7 weeks this spring. I cracked a rib from coughing. I had bloodshot eyes from coughing. I spent a lot of time in my bathtub, and I spent a lot of time really being so sad that the life that I wanted, the life that I was building for myself, the life that I thought was a sure thing, changed in a 20-minute conversation and never went back. And somewhere in the spring, like a couple months after that, I was lying in bed, as I did a lot this spring. And I had this feeling, which was, because of who and how I am, because of how so many of us are, I was hyper focused on who I could be to make my life be what it was, and really how I could earn my way back to what was wrenched from me. And I had this realization, which was, if I hadn't proved my worth, if I hadn't been the person who would be picked in 17 years, I sure as fuck was not going to be that person now. And that was a really painful and startling realization. And it caused me to kind of reformat my life around how I was showing up in relationships, because I could see so clearly one of the things that was keeping me burnt out was this belief that if I did everything just so, if I did everything perfectly, if I was everything to everyone, I could safeguard myself against the things that I was really afraid of. The rejection, the being left alone with myself that I never wanted to be. And the origins of that start so early in my life. The way that I learned to, who I learned that I needed to be in order to be loved started so early in my life. And I have worked that to a place of excellence for my entire life. And so what do you do when it doesn't work? What do you do when you've done all of the things and you've done them as best as you possibly can and it's not enough? And who are you then? So when I talk about the kind of overarching part of burnout, it's there are tools that can help you to know where you are on a burnout spectrum. In 2026, it's not an if, it's a when, right? Burnout is in the room with us all of the time. There are so many things to contend with every single day that there are tools that we can learn, frankly, and utilize so that we can keep ourselves as well nourished and as alive as possible. But that doesn't safeguard us against burnout, right? So the tools are dualfold. It's how to kind of keep ourselves in a place of being well cared for enough so that we can be present and accounted for and keep showing up for what matters to us. But it's also having the tools to pull ourselves out of that burnout when we notice that that's where we are, and maybe even pull ourselves out just a little bit sooner, just a little bit sooner, just a little bit sooner. But the thing about this work, and this is what I'm so passionate about as a coach, as a writer, as a mental health care provider, the thing that I'm so passionate about is the underpinning, because underneath the tools, the reason why all of the things, because I know you all are experts. You're listening to the podcast, you're reading the books, you're doing the things, you're saving the reels, you're practicing the stuff. It's not that you're not trying. It's that underneath it all, there are these dominant messages that are running the show. And for me, the dominant message that has been running the show is not enough, must do more, must be excellent, must safeguard myself by being everything to everyone, which is a full-time job times 1,000. So of course I was neglecting myself because I had this belief that if I did all of those things well enough, there would come a point where the time, the energy, and the reciprocity would turn its way back to me. But what I found, in my relationship and in my life overarching, is that that time wasn't coming. And I knew that on some level, but this was a really big, this was like a new bottom to reach. And, in January, I have this mirror in my office right over here. In January, I wrote myself this message that said, more open-hearted joy and less trying to be impressive, which felt really vulnerable and risky for me at the time. Because being impressive was my favorite coping mechanism. Being impressive was my favorite thing. Like if I could just record a perfect enough podcast, if I could put together a perfect enough course, if I could, write all of the right emails, do all of the right things, be the right and perfect wife, be the right and perfect mother. If I could be impressive in all of these ways, then I would be good. Then I would be worthy. Then I would be safe. But the long story short is that our worth has nothing to do with what we do and everything to do with who we are. And so on the other side of this big and undesired change was an opportunity for me to declare my willingness to be me, to be with me, to be by my own side, and to back my own needs. So when you have this feeling of like the life that I want for myself, that life that you see other people having and you think like, why not me? There's a part of you that says, why not me? But also is ready with the answer, right? I'm not X. I'm, if only I were better, different, someone else, then the life that I want would be here for me. But I want to tell you that the life that you want is all roads through you, right? Your needs, your wants, what you like, what your preferences are, who you are, the cringy things about you, the things that you learn to exile in order to be loved by other people, right? The things that your fear tells you you cannot be, because if you want to be loved, you can't be these things, right? Needy, namely needy. The life that you want, a life where you are not burnt to a crisp, a life where you are not beholden to absolutely everyone and everything above and beyond yourself, is all roads through you. And my work is really a practice in being with yourself. Being with yourself, even when you don't want to be with yourself. Being with yourself when, you are embarrassed or disappointed by yourself. Being with yourself even when you have to come to terms with the fact that like you are not going to ever be. It's like, no matter what I do, my legs are always going to be short. No matter what I do, I'm always going to have the neurotype that I have. No matter what I do, I am going to have this body, this brain, this set of pain points and wounds. This is what I'm working with. And coming to terms with that, because the alternative is, that pattern is like, if I do all of the things, then I'll be better than I am. And so therefore I'll have the life that I want. And I want to turn that on its head. And I want to say all roads through you. So the fear says that, you need to be a certain way in order to be good, in order to be successful, in order to be loved. But staying by your own side, tending your ecosystem, your multitude of an ecosystem, is taking radical responsibility for who you already are. And who you are is not just like enough. Enough is like just a drop in the bucket, is fucking fantastic. You may not be for everyone. There may be heartbreak on this journey for you, but who you are is fantastic. This doesn't mean that you don't have things to work on. We all do, right? We all do. But working on yourself from a place of optimizing, strategizing, always trying to like game the system so that you can outrun the rejection or the pain or the grief that you don't want to feel is never going to work. And so I want to posit to you, as I posit to myself, a reframe, which is that when you learn to like yourself, know, like, and trust yourself, this is when you are able to really benefit from the support of the one relationship in your life that you're going to have from the moment you're born until the day that you die. And that's the relationship that you have with yourself. The whole holy point of being alive is to live your life as your fully expressed, imperfect, glorious, sometimes disappointing, but wildly wonderful self. Now, Mary Oliver says, and I butcher this all the time, and I might just butcher it now, something to the effect of awareness is the first act of devotion. And I truly believe in being devoted to myself. Like even here, even in my sadness, even in my heartbreak, even when I had that bronchitis and I couldn't get out of bed and I was in the bath and I didn't want to accept the changes that were happening in my life. What I would ask myself over and over again is, am I willing to be here? Am I willing to be where I am? Am I willing to be who I am? Am I willing to be how I am? Even though where and who and how I am in that moment and so many moments since has been deeply undesirable. Like, that is not where I wanted to be. And yet, that is where I was. That is where I am. So this work of coming alive, this work of staying alive is about knowing who you are. Awareness is an act of devotion, knowing who you are, knowing what you want, knowing what your preferences are, knowing what you need, knowing how to ask for it, knowing what to do when you ask for it, and the person that you are really, really hoping will say yes says no. What do you do then? That's going to happen to you. No matter how good you are, I promise you, in some way, shape, or form, that is going to happen to you. And so the better equipped that you are with these data points about yourself in context, the better equipped you're going to be to practice doing you and being you on purpose. And when we think about burnout especially, part of what burns us out is the energy that we spend pouring into trying to be other than we are, trying to look more pulled together, trying to be something that we're not, trying to be everything to everyone else so that we don't get left and we don't get abandoned. Trying. It's exhausting. It is exhausting. And when I look at my life, I'm able to see that over the course of the last 17 years, I have been trying to be a version of myself that's safe in relationship, that won't get left, that gets picked every single time, because getting picked is belonging and belonging is safety. All the while knowing that all of that effort of trying to belong to everyone else around me, trying to get picked by everyone else around me, was sacrificing belonging to myself, was sacrificing picking myself. And I think that for so many of us who, carry these stories, being responsible, being the oldest daughter, being the person that everybody leans on, picking yourself feels selfish. It feels like, no, that's a bad thing. I can't do that. That's a surefire route to being exiled, to not belonging. But picking yourself, learning how to belong to yourself, is the only real path to ensuring that you will be chosen 100% of the time. I will be chosen 100% of the time because I am willing to choose myself in that way. And so things fell apart. My life isn't what I expected it to be or what I want it to be. But in this gap, in this bridge, in this process of coming back to life, I am willing to back myself. I am willing to be by my own side. I am willing to combat the stories in my head that, like, I'm human. This shows up for me. That if I were different, if I were better, if I were this, if I were that, this wouldn't have happened to me. And to blame myself for everything that I'm not, instead of embracing myself for everything that I am, because I am a lot of good stuff and I bring a lot to the table. And the sooner that I remember to get back on my own side, the sooner I am able to rest in the comfort of knowing that no matter who else chooses me or doesn't, I'm always going to choose myself. No matter who else picks me for belonging or doesn't, I'm always going to belong to myself. And this is a process, right? This is a process. But the process begins with awareness. The process begins with your willingness, with you deciding for yourself that you are willing to stay by your own side no matter what happens. And I cannot express this enough. Like, shit is going to happen. Not because you weren't good enough, but because shit happens. Because we're humans. because we're relating to and with other humans. And things change, things end. But the more well-developed the relationship is that we have with ourselves, the better equipped we are going to be when things do change, when things do shift. Thanks for listening to Even Here, Even Now with Mara Glatzel. If you want my support in learning to stay by your own side and nourish your needs, dance on over to maraglatzel.com/quiz to take my quiz to figure out what you need right now and receive my best tools for how to meet those needs with a greater sense of ease and confidence. If you love today's show, please leave us a rating or review wherever you subscribe to this podcast. It helps more than you know. And as always, permission loves company. If there's a human in your life that you think can benefit from this conversation, I would be so grateful if you shared it with them. Thank you. See you next time.